morning, everyone, or afternoon. I don't know what time it is. So imagine this. Imagine you wake up actually in a hospital surrounded by nurses, unfamiliar machines, and unfamiliar sights, sounds, and smells. The morning this happened to me, I knew I was in a hospital, but I didn't know why I was there. The night before, I was getting ready to go to a party to meet my crush. One of his friends, whom I had known, was coming to pick me up, and he did. We drove around for a little bit, and we actually ended up in a cemetery. There, I had a couple of beers with him, and he kept persisting that I drink the hard liquor that he brought. After much persistence, I eventually gave in, and that's the last thing I remember until I woke up in the hospital. The next morning, apparently, a woman looked out her window and saw on her street a car stopped. As she watched the car, she saw the passenger door open, and I fall out onto the side of the road. She saw the car drive away, and she immediately called 911. So I turned to the nurse after I'd woken up, and I said, what am I doing here? And she looked at me and she said, because you were raped. Those 3 words hit me like a ton of bricks and altered my life and the perception of who I thought I was. This isn't a rare occurrence, though. This happens to over 300,000 people annually. But I never thought it would happen to me. I never thought I would be raped, as I'm sure many of you think that today as well. But it did. It was October 9th, 2004. I was young. I was 19. I was a freshman in college. I was very naive, and I was a virgin. So I had to take some time to obviously recover and try to move forward. The physical recovery was very trying. The day after I was raped, there were bruises on my body that I had to face for the next week, every time I looked in the mirror. The emotional recovery, which sometimes I'm still going through, has been far worse. And actually in high school, I had an eating disorder that came back after I was raped. So one thing that I definitely have learned, though, is that speaking has started to make me stronger, because sexual violence is something that not a lot of people talk about. Once I started to speak, I started to realize that I was growing stronger. So during my recovery process, I had to face many crossroads and also face many steps to heal as well. And I'm going to share some of those with you today. First off, as I mentioned, speaking, definitely a huge part of my recovery. Second step was becoming physically active and living a healthy lifestyle. That actually helped my eating disorder subside, and I've been relapse-free since 2008. Thank you. The other item that I did, and I don't know how many of you are familiar with PAR, Pittsburgh's Action Against Rape, about a year after. They do such an amazing job, absolutely wonderful. A year after I was raped, I went to PAR, and I sat in on one of their counseling sessions. It was intimidating at first, but it really opened my eyes to the issue that sexual violence is. And it also made me realize what the amazing things that PAR does. Another thing that I struggled with, though, was intimacy. The early stages of my recovery, I thought I was searching for a man that I could trust and love and eventually call my husband. But in reality, I was learning and searching to try to love myself and forgive myself for what had happened. In the long run, I eventually met my husband, and I was open with him about everything: the rape, my eating disorder, my past relationships, and that I wanted to speak and be an advocate for sexual violence for those that can't speak about it. And he was very accepting of everything, and still is today. And that's when I knew he was not only going to be my husband, but my best friend and my soulmate. And we now have a 9-month-old son. And my parents, they're amazing. They have so much strength and courage, and they have been such a great support system. And I give them so much credit for everything they had to go through that revolved around the rape. And like I said, my husband, he's my rock. He actually got me back to God. It took some time, but he helped me find God again. My father is someone, though, that struggles with God. He always questions, why would God let something like this happen to me? And so I turn to the Bible, and I look at Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. You intended to do harm to me, but God intended it to be good. And now what it is doing is saving many lives. My husband always says God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And obviously with some of the, almost all these stories we've heard this morning so far, you definitely can tell that he does do that, and all of you are so amazing for everything you do. And lastly, if I leave you with one thing today, well, actually two things, just think about this. Every 107 seconds, another American is sexually assaulted. Since I've been on stage, that's been almost 3 people. Just think about that in an hour, in a 24-hour period. So if you've ever experienced any form of this kind of violence, I hope you find inside of you the steps that you need to take to heal and know that you can get from a broken spot. And if you haven't, but you know somebody that's going through this, or you just want to educate yourself, I hope you find it deep down inside of you to take the time and get the courage and fight to bring an end to sexual violence. Thank you so much.